This is a presentation on rhetoric because any presentation about style is going to be about rhetoric. I really am convinced more than ever that style and rhetoric are linked. I hope to show that a little bit in this presentation. I couldn't get by without talking about Williams and Barron and all the great stuff, all the foundational important things I learned in their books, but the person that sticks in my mind most of all is Richard Lanham. He has a particular quote, not in the book that we read for this class, but another book called The Electronic Word that has just haunted me, and the quote is this: "Rhetoric defines itself as a counter-system to the Platonic political order by admitting stylistic or ornamental behavior, by acknowledging that such behavior lies at the heart of human life, is what human politics is all about. If stylistic behavior is acknowledged as a part of the complex human reason, then rhetoric becomes the systematic attempt to account for this complex reason and find agreements within it." So style and rhetoric are linked here by Lanham in, I think, a very important way. And I was thinking about Lanham and style and rhetoric and even fashion and how I finally understand, I think, how it fits into human life. I never understood it before. And I started to think about the medium of rhetoric. Barron especially led me to think about, when he wrote about the clay tablets, I was thinking about how um, how what we write on both the medium of the writing, which is almost always paper, before the computer, and the stylus or the impression mechanism, the embossing mechanism, the graphite, the pencil, the typewriter, the computer, how those two relate to one another. And I really thought a lot about the page. And anytime you talk about the medium, you immediately find yourself referring to Marshall McLuhan. And this is a wonderful cartoon about McLuhan that he actually reprinted in one of his books. And the kid is trying to explain to his dad, look at this face, this is great, what McLuhan meant. You see, Dad, Professor McLuhan says the environment that man creates becomes his medium for defining his role in it. The invention of type created linear or sequential thought, separating thought from action. Now with TV and folk singing, notice that the kid's got a guitar there. Now with TV and folk singing, thought and action are closer and social involvement is greater. We again live in a village, get it? Now, what would we use today as examples? TV wouldn't be TV and folk singing, I don't think. Um, Maybe it would be Facebook. Maybe it would be another tool that causes us to live in a village. But the idea is there that the medium is so intensely important. Of course, McLuhan wrote in Understanding Media his most famous quote, and we all know that quote, and I keep going back to it. The medium is the message. The medium is the message. At the time, now, McLuhan died 10 years before the web was invented, so everything he was talking about was about mass media, but it's almost creepy how much of it applies to 21st century multimedia, to the internet, to social media, all of those things. So thinking about the medium, I went all the way back to the printing press. Now you can go all the way back to Plato for discussions of how of the medium and whether even literacy is good for people or not. Talking about the Phaedrus. But I went back to the printing press and I thought about the printing press and how we write today for the printing press still in so many cases. So we get pages that look like this still so often because we're writing for the printing press. And unfortunately, sometimes the medium doesn't shape the message, so we get a message in our Gmail or our email that looks like it was written for the printing press, and it's completely inappropriate, and it makes us despair for our lives. But more often, the medium does affect the message. So, for example, you've got this Prezi that I've created in a very nonlinear fashion, even though I'm kind of squeezing it into this linear YouTube video. This Prezi is very nonlinear, and I didn't write a script deliberately because I wanted it to be less linear. I wanted it to be less scripted. And so we can end up, we can end up with, we can produce things that should be produced on a printing press and are fitted to a printing press, but with our current tools, more and more often we're finding ourselves being able to create things that are less linear. Uh, Unfortunately, that's not true for academic papers for the most part. We get things like this, which I wrote not long ago, and it was written for the printing press. And we get things like this, which are a little bit better because they at least have columns and illustrations, but once again, they're written for black and white printing press. And I'm not running down those papers. I mean, the work is very important. It's just that we are, I think, in many ways, moving forward uh, without really thinking about the medium. We think about the message more than we think about the medium. We don't allow the medium to affect the message as much as it could in a positive way. You might be saying, Dan, well, what does this have to do with rhetoric? What does it have to do with style? Remember, the medium is the message. So in my paper, I really tried to get away from being totally linear. Now, I wanted to get a good grade, so I sold out a little bit, and I wrote something that was still a traditional paper in many ways, but I played with the formatting. I played with the marginalia. I really tried to make the paper less linear by putting points that were secondary in the paper that I thought were important or interesting in the margins. And I added color and I changed the formatting. And I tried to make it easier to read. I tried to make it easier to read on screen. And the paper itself was actually about online conventions and how the medium of Facebook and the medium of Twitter and the medium of comment spaces, for example, the comment spaces in the Economist online communities affect how writing changes, affect how style changes. And I found in my paper that my style of writing changed because I changed the format of the paper. And I found that on Facebook and on Twitter and on these comment spaces, all of the different affordances of those and perceived affordances of those media affected the way those things were written. So the media is the message. Rhetoric and style are linked. And I learned a ton in this class, and I will always appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening.